the channel. So in this video I'll be sharing how to make a circle shirt dress. It has a bottom placket, it has a collar, sleeves, and also a belt which can be worn or not depending on how you're feeling. So these are all the items needed: the fabric, scissors, and tape. I also got chalk over here. So these are all the items I'll be using. To begin, I folded my fabric right sides facing on a bias. So the reason I'm doing this on a bias is because I want the lower part to be wide as opposed to straight or A-lined. So I'm folding on a bias, and I'll be taking the length of my garment from the bottom, which is the widest part, to the narrow part, because when taking the length I do not want to lose the widest part of this fold. So as you can see, I took my length from that bottom part and marked where the length would stop at the top. I wanted mine to be 40 inches, so I marked 40 inches from the bottom to the top, which is the narrow part. So that 40-inch mark on the top is where I would take my shoulder line and my bust, my waist, my hip, as you can see here. So basically I measured the length from the bottom, then marked where the 40-inch point would be, and that is where my shoulder would be as well, which would be the narrowest part of this fold. And I marked my waist, my bust, and my hip. So what I'll be doing next is to take a quarter of my bust, my waist, and add 1 inch or 2 inch to it to ensure that it's not so clingy on my body. So I'll take a quarter of my bust, my waist, and this is what it looks like when it's marked. So I didn't take a quarter of my hip because, like I said, this is going to be like free. So from that point where I have my waistline marked, I'm just going to create a slant line to the end of the fabric. So I'm just going to curve it using my free hand. As you can see, it curves like this from the bust to the waist, and it just goes all the way down from there to the bottom. So I really did not need to take my hip measurement for this. So what I'll be doing next is to take my neck measurement, and from that center fold I would mark 2.5 inches along the shoulder and 1.5 inches downward. So I'm working with a shoulder that is 2.5 inches wide and 1.5 inch deep. So my neckline is going to be 1.5 inch deep and 2.5 inch wide. I would also go ahead and slant my shoulder with 1 inch, and I did cut it out at this point. So this is what it is looking like. This is my back plan. Next up, I'll be taking my dart measurements along the back plan, and I'll be marking 5.5 inches from the center back and 4.5 inches downward from that 5.5 inch mark and 4.5 inch upward. So the length of the dart would be 9 inch in total, which is 5.5 from the center back. That's the distance from the center back to the dart, and the length upwards will be 4.5 inches and the length downwards will be 4.5 inches. Once that is done, I would mark ½ inch on either side of that line on my waistline and connect it to the 4.5 inch mark on either side of my waistline, and that I'll be doing on both sides of the back to form the dart. For the front, I basically folded my fabric the same way that I folded the front, or the same way that I folded the back. I folded on a bias, and the front would definitely be wider because we'll be making a bottom placket on the front part, which we do not have on the back side. So I folded my front plan a little bit wider, and then I placed the back plan, which we cut earlier, right onto that plan. As you can see, it extends further along the center front as opposed to the center back. So I'm going to use the back plan as a guide to just cut around the length, the waist, the sides, the shoulder, but the center front would be 3 inches wider because we'll be needing that for the bottom placket. So this center front, which I have cut, is 3 inches wider as opposed to the back, and my neckline is slightly deeper on the front as opposed to the back. So the front neckline is basically 2.5 inch wide and 2.5 inch deep. So 2.5 inch wide and 3 inches deep. So that's how deep and how wide the front neckline is. And I basically use the back as a guideline to notch the where I want the bracket to stop, because you want it to align with the measurements for the back. You don't want the front to be too big, so hence why I notch where that back center back seam or that center back part of the fabric is, and that is going to help me when making the placket, as you can see. And to make the placket, I'm basically going to fold my that 3 inch extension into two. I'll be making a double fold like this, and I'll be stitching at the outer corner of this fold before opening it up to form a placket. So the idea here is to kind of lock in this raw seam in between the smaller fold and the bigger part of the shirt. So you want to ensure that while you double fold and while you sew, that raw edge which is folded in touches the outer corner here, and you sew it in with your sewing machine, or while you sew you basically lock it in. And this other side I have done, as you can see. So the idea is to lock that raw edge like this. So when you fold it in twice, you sew on the outer edge, and it should look something like this. When you have it opened up, you can see that that inner edge is caught in between the seams, and it's just going to remain in there. Okay, so this is what I'll be doing on both sides, and when I do that, I'm basically going to come back and show you guys what to do next. So having stitched it down, I opened it up and I made a stop stitch on the inner side just to ensure that it lays really nice and flat. Then I joined my shoulder, and I'm going to go ahead and take my back dart before I join the sides of the piece. So I'll be joining the I have joined the shoulders at this point. What I'll be doing is to join the sides and show you guys what next to do. The next step would be to make the sleeves. I had this burnt orange or brown satin for a while, and I really did not know what to do with it, so I thought it would be nice to combine it on the base of this sleeve like I have done here. So I basically cut out a sleeve that is 10 inches long with the main fabric, and for the satin I cut a piece that is 9 inches wide, and just the length, the or rather 9 inches long, and the width of the satin would be slightly wider than my sleeve length or the width of my sleeve. So what I would do is to place the wrong side of the fabric onto the right side of the satin, and I'm going to stitch the bottom like this, like I have done. Next up, you can iron this down if you so desire, but I won't be doing that. So what I'll be doing next is to fold it in like this, ensuring that I kind of tuck in the edges in between those folds. So while I do this, I'm going to bend the edges of this satin inwards like this. I feel like this gives it a lot more clean finish as opposed to just stitching on the satin straight onto the fabric. So what I'll be doing is to lock in this raw edge, and to do this I'm basically going to fold in the edge of the satin like this, and then top stitch it from end to end before cutting off the excess on either side of the sleeve. So when I fold like this, I'll top stitch really close to the edge, and this gives it a really nicer finish, like I said. So I'll be doing the same thing for this like I have done for the other sleeve, as you can see, before proceeding to take my arm measurements and attaching it to the entire garment. Okay, after sewing on the sleeves, I did sew on a collar as well. Do note that I have a detailed video on how to sew a collar, hence why I did not include that into this video. So I'm going to have that very one linked in the description box in case you have not seen it. So next up, I'll be making buttonholes and hand stitching the buttons onto the placket. I'll be doing this off camera to save time because I do not want this video to be too lengthy. Then I would go ahead to hem the bottom of the garment from end to end all the way around, and that is basically it for this video, you guys. So I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, do give me a thumbs up, and this is what the final look looks like. I'll be seeing you guys in another video. Bye.